claim that contemporary progressivism is incompatible with the Western tenets of rationalism and liberalism. I will address the advocate's secondary claims. First, that progressives use speech, policing, and social shaming to silence individuals who criticize their philosophy. Second, that rationalism, scientific rigor, and skepticism are less valued than emotional thinking and political correctness. In regards to the first supported claim, my counterclaim is that progressives don't have the power to silence everyone who oppose their beliefs, and that's because access to information is not only available in the college campuses. You can get access to any information through the internet and such. People have the liberty to voice their opinions outside college or university grounds. This information can be viewed by millions of people through internet and social media, so it's extremely difficult to silence anyone who wants their voice to be heard. Also, the evidence from the speech university rankings, it's from a magazine that's, right now it's called Spike, but it used to be called Living Marxism, and they were shut down after a lawsuit for exposing sensitive information, and it costed them to go bankrupt. So they're clearly against any type of censorship. Therefore, this piece of information, it's unreliable because a conflict of interest, the people putting out this information, they want to make it seem like everyone is being censored when that's not really the case. And in addition, the banning of speakers who criticize progressive values does not happen often, and it's not widely supported. As Alex Mori from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education writes, Americans would rather students engage in debate than be safely insulated from offending points of view. Moving on to my second point, my response to the second supported claim challenges the evidence used by the advocate. I say that rationalism and skepticism are highly valued by modern progressives. First, the advocate implies that trigger warnings are used as a way of censoring information, and that's not actually the case. Trigger warnings are actually used in the process of exposing information that leads to rational thinking. Warnings are primarily for those who experience anxiety and PTSD. These people are likely to experience panic attacks similar reactions if they're exposed to specific pieces of information or images. So by telling them that they're going to be exposed to this information, we allow them to prepare for that information, and that also has the potential to keep a panic attack from happening, and that would interfere with the thinking process from occurring. As Man Kate from the New York Times writes, it's not about cuddling anyone, it's about enabling everyone's rational engagement. Finally, the advocate states that transgender activism ignores new studies about and favors emotionally based advice. They have every reason to question these new studies that are put out. Transgender activists are skeptical of new studies given that their identities have been deemed medically abnormal. A study by the National Center for Biotechnology Information reports that the majority of healthcare providers lack adequate knowledge to take care of their transgender patients. Given that the medical community continues to misunderstand and pathologize transgenderism, it's reasonable to question their findings. In conclusion, the evidence used by the advocate was unreliable, and it led to hasty generalizations. Because progressives don't have the power to silence their opponents, and rationalism and skepticism are actually highly valued by modern progressives.
All right, I thought you did a good job arguing counterclaim on a couple of these points. For instance, the notion that on the first point that there's access to information from a variety of sources, that people are not just limited to college campuses. I like that kind of general response. I think that works well. Also, since we were talking social media, I appreciated the reference to social media here. One of the things that you might want to do is contrast the access to that information to the campuses that the advocate seems to be talking about, primarily the colleges and the universities. And by the way, I think you could point out that most of the colleges and universities that get named are very specialized places, as opposed to the most colleges and universities. So you might occasionally run into a problem at one of those liberal arts colleges where people are offended by a point of view that they see as being different, but that's not the case at state universities or state colleges, community colleges, or most private colleges. It's typically a problem at some elitist college, and it's really more representative of those groups than it is of general progressives. I thought that your argument about the potential bias of the source on this was a little unclear. I'm not sure that it gets you very much here, so I'm not, I'm a little iffy on that particular point. You do have a general claim on that first point that suggests that people prefer debate rather than being insulated. I think that might be true, but I'm not sure that that addresses the question of whether or not they're being allowed to debate, so you might want to be looking for some information that would support that point. On the second point, you defend the trigger warnings and suggest that it really just allows people to participate in the process. I thought that was a pretty good, straightforward explanation. One of the things you might point out is that the advocate never showed how trigger warnings prevented a discussion of a particular issue. They just warned people that something was coming that they might want to be aware of and be prepared to deal with, especially for people who have social anxiety issues. The New York Times quote, I think, is a good one that you have there at the end of that particular point. I thought that worked pretty effectively. And then the last point, I think this is a little bit of an odd issue because it sounds to me like we're saying we should believe whatever the transgenders believe rather than what the doctors believe on these things. The doctors are a bunch of idiots when it comes to what the consequence of this is because they're uninformed, and the transgender community is better informed on those issues. I think the general communication that maybe people are uninformed about some of the issues that transgendered people face, that's a legitimate argument. But I think you're getting into some questions about who's more credible on healthcare issues, for instance, and I think that you've got to have a better argument than this on that particular point. All right, thank you.